Hello, and welcome to Judy and Friends. We're glad to be here with you. And of course, we're going to have a very stimulating conversation going on for the next half hour. So I'd like again to welcome part of our team, the original Kathy Lee, and the roving Jerome Roberts we're waiting on him. He'll be a little late. But we have Gary Williams will be a little late. Jerome is back from his travels around the country. And Jerome, the one that gets around town, and also he's the Philadelphia Gator. Okay, welcome home. How was it? How was the trip?
Well, I was in Las Vegas, and this is my second trip to Las Vegas since the pandemic started. When I went last year, the strip was empty. I mean, literally, I've never seen it like that. And I've been going to Vegas for almost 30 years. But the strip was dead empty. This time when I went back, the strip was full. Matter of fact, the planes I flew on all the way out there were 90 to 95% full. So people are getting vaccinated and they're hitting the streets. That's all I got to say. People are getting vaccinated and they're hitting the streets. I got vaccinated in March, and I needed to travel. I will be doing some more traveling, going to Atlanta to see my children and my grandchildren. But people are traveling, and I'm going to say about 80% of people are wearing masks and talking about, the vaccination rate in the country is pretty high right now. They're doing between 1 to 2 million a day. So we'll see where this pandemic goes. One bad experience that I had was I tried to rent a car about 3 weeks ago, and car rentals are bust. Due to the pandemic, all of the major rental car companies sold off their inventory. And now that demand is starting to pick up, there's a computer chip shortage in the making of new cars. So cars are slowly coming off of the production line. And the anticipation is that this is going to be going on for up to a year to correct the situation, because so many of the rental car companies sold off good portions of their fleet due to the pandemic. So the economy in this country is going to be challenged for at least another year. But I'll be doing a little traveling. I'm too old to stop now, so I got to hit the road.
Well, we're glad to have you back. And now we see that Gary, the man around town, he's just popped in. So, hi, Gary.
Hi, how are you?
Okay.
How's everybody?
Everybody's fine. How are you?
Well, I got up. Okay. The weather's beautiful. The weather's beautiful here in Philly, anyhow. I have family in Georgia. They say it's kind of chilly down there. So, yeah. So they're there right now, and they'll be there a couple of weeks. But everything's fine. I mean, a lot going on. Like Jerome said, people coming out more. I was out in the. I went to the Cherry Street Pier, and it's really interesting. They have it looks like an airplane hangar, and they're developing all the properties down by the pier, by the water. So what they have is a situation where they have vendors and music and restaurant, and that whole area is across from the one of the hotels. I won't mention the name. I'm not promoting anything, but that whole area down in North Columbus Boulevard, it's like a new city down there. It's just seeing it develop, kind of tells me what direction that Philadelphia is trying to go in, as far as developing more of the outskirts than the inner part where people really need housing. It's interesting. So let's see what maybe we try to become another tourist attraction again, based on the city loosening up. I have no clue as to why it's happening, but I did attend a meeting a couple of years ago where they had this PHL something, and they had all these different workshops, and they had all the developers in one of the workshops that I attended. And one of the gentlemen, I don't know his name, I can't remember, didn't mention the fact that they're trying to develop the seaport,
Mm-hmm.
the old seaport that they had. So there's a lot of outer city developing as opposed to just the regular real estate developers developing housing that is overpriced.
Well, in the city, Gary, we still have a lot of problems. We have, of course, the job situation and getting places for people to stay. But Kathy, and she's ready to talk about something that's very dear to her and that's happening all over our country, and particularly here in Philadelphia. Kathy, that's something about cash bail.
Well, it ties in what Gary was saying with the development of commercial property for money. But you know, when you look at cash bail and the history of cash bail in this country, as a matter of fact, in the newspaper today, hold it up, Flyer, in New Jersey, they are working on waiving mandatory prison sentences for nonviolent drug offenders and some other things. But the reason why we were going to, why we're talking about cash bail is there are a lot of challenges associated with cash bail, and it does have a street that goes along with it.
Well, what are we going
Oh,
to do about it? What do you suggest? What are you talking about it? Who's doing anything?
well, you know, when you look at it from a historical perspective, I mean, it goes back to the founding of goes back to the House of Burgess, goes back to Virginia. But if that's when, according to Judge Leon Higginbotham in his book In the Matter of Color, he basically outlines how the judicial system impacted enslaved people and free Africans that lived in the country from the colonial times before 1700, and it still carries all the way up to the day.
Mm.
Because in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia has the highest incarceration rate for any free large jurisdiction in the country, even though the jail population is about 36% by 2015. And a lot of people are being held in jail because bail is not supposed to be used to hold you in jail, but that is what it's up to the judge's discretion whether or not they want to do that. So when you look at what even the history of Pennsylvania and bail, it was William Penn that basically set up a separate court for, at that time, Negroes. And the separate courts were basically set up so that the rights of the master could be protected, according to my understanding. I'm just saying. So if anyone else wants to come in and weigh that, feel free to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Philadelphia recently had a primary for the district attorney, and the current district attorney has talked about cash bail, but he hasn't done anything about cash bail, which is interesting because talk is real cheap. Cash bail, especially in the inner cities, is used to keep us in jail. And cash bail needs to go. I mean, Gary, what do you think about that?
Well, yeah, it does need to go because of the simple fact that, I mean, if you can't do the time, if you can't pay the crime or do the time, as the saying goes, it's like, you know, if you can't do the time, if you can't do the time, don't pay, don't do, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. And it seems like that's what it is, because most of the people that can't afford to pay the bail are the ones that are ending up in the crime situation. Now, what we need to think about is what causes them to commit the crimes. So we know that it's jobs, we know there's education, we know a lot of different factors. It's not knowing outside your community. I mean, the way you were raised in a certain particular area, like today, as opposed to most of us that were raised in a certain type of foundation where we had a spiritual background or some type of religious background. We had Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, we had camp, we had things, you know. Now
Yeah.
today they're not supplying those things for the youth. So to me, it's like a setup.
Okay, it is, but I do want to push back on Jerome because you said Krasner isn't doing anything. Krasner has basically almost eliminated being charged as adult. In addition, he cleaned house in the district attorney's office after he was elected in 2017. And some of the holdup with other moving forward with reforming criminal justice, the criminal justice system in Philadelphia, is the FOP. And it's the FOP that are putting up all these billboards deriding his performance because he's seen as being anti, and he's really kind of like not. He's just anti what you do. And I think that people need to understand the difference in that because the person you have running against, I'm just saying, is the anytime the police are pushing, I'm looking the other way.
Yeah.
And so the MacArthur Foundation did do a study on Krasner and his attempts to do that, but Krasner also, I correct me if I'm wrong, they've also been having uh, uh, employment sessions for people that are waiting for pretrial. They also set up like job fairs for those individuals who've been arrested and are on supervision, and that's all part of the push to reduce the jail population. But prior to Krasner, they were charging roughly, if my memory serves me correctly, about 300 to 400 children as adults. And since he's been there, 50 have been charged as adults. But there are also other organizations out there. I found one, and it's called the Philadelphia Bail Fund. And so what they do is they bail out. They have a GoFundMe page, and they basically bail out who are sitting in jail because they simply can't afford to pay. And that's not what bail is about. Bail is set to ensure that you show up. And that goes back to Anglo-Saxon England. And that's basically was brought over here because we were an English colony. Let's not get it twisted. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and I'm just saying too, Jerome, is that I just saw something about the parole reforms under Krasner to reduce racial disparities. I mean, and anytime the Democrats, along with the police, decide that they don't think he's worthy of running, there's something wrong with that picture. There got to be something wrong with that picture when you see a person that is already in office and the people that are supposed to be pro people against that person and the police against that person. That means they're in bed with each other. I'm just saying. So why is it that he's being attacked when he's trying to do some things that are going to be good for the people that other people just, you think that they're on your side, but they're against them. That's why I have to look at things like that because it sends a light off in my head. I'm just saying that something's wrong.
Well, are you guys saying that it is needed or not needed? And if it is needed, what are you suggesting could be done to make it better for other people?
I suggest that cash bail is not needed. Not that many people don't show up for their court-appointed appearances. The number that abscond or run off is relatively small. The percentage of people is relatively small that do that. Philadelphia County has one of the highest incarceration rates of African Americans in this whole United States of America. So the fact that district attorney was trying to diminish the impact of cash bail was looked at upon by the Fraternal Order of Police as, hey, I'm being favorable to the Negroes who are all criminals. And that is what the cash bail system has been about. It's a way of trying. Oh, and the other thing about cash bail is tax bail goes on the taxation side. Many of these bail programs and other different things that the police do, we pay taxes in the city of Philadelphia, the county of Philadelphia, and we're paying for police to harass us. And that's basically what they do. And cash bail is a continuation of the harassment process, especially in non-bodily injury cases. Cases where, I got a little bit of weed in my pocket or something, or I'm driving with a joint. When you start throwing cash bail around in situations like that, It's punitive. And that's what we need to get away from, making this cash bail punitive. Most people that are charged show up in the 80 to 85% realm. So people aren't, running off and leaving the bail. It's just not happening. And since these, especially the minor crimes, like the drug possession crimes, are designed to put money in the hands of the tax collectors.
But that's the history. But I'm sorry, Trudy, go ahead.
No, we'll take a break and we'll come right back to your point. Okay?
Okay, dokie.
Okay, we happen to be talking about a very serious problem in this country, cash bail. If it's needed, why and how? Kathy?
Yes. Was the Brennan Center also put forth February 24th of this year, and a lot of challenge with the cash bail system is it's dominated by commercial bail bondsmen, and they are throughout the entire. In fact, you have TV shows with them down people and jumping all up and all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of money made in detaining, incarcerating people, and pretrial detainees make up 70% of the jail population. In other words, they haven't even been seen by a judge, but they're sitting in jail and they're rotting. And the average length of stay is different depending on the color of the person. But that's nothing new in America. That is nothing new. So if you can't afford a private bail bond company who agree to be responsible for the person's bail obligation in exchange for a non-refundable fee, they get between 10 to 15%. So in other words, they're compensated whether or not the person shows up or not. That goes back to colonial Pennsylvania, because whenever a slave person committed a felony crime or whatever, they really considered the rights of the master, which is why they set up the separate courts according to Hickman. So these disparities within the criminal justice system are embedded within the criminal justice, the whole country. And that's why we're looked upon differently, and that's why we're treated differently. So there you go. And also, my last point is this. The people that are bailing the folks out, the Philadelphia bail folks, almost all of them show up. And out of 100 cases, a whole lot of them were dismissed. There were only like 4 because people wind up, get out of jail, they want their freedom. They're pleading to lesser charges, even though they were innocent of the one that they were arrested for.
So are you proposing that we have no bail or no way to retain people, or that it should just be altered and changed and improved?
Well, I'm sorry. The challenge is they want to cite the 8th Amendment. And the 8th Amendment is in the Constitution, where it does discuss bail. So if any change is going to be made, some people are suggesting it be done legislatively, like they're doing in Jersey and like Krasner is trying to do here. To change the Constitution is probably not, they're saying it's probably not the way to go, because the founding fathers were very much aware of the Anglo-Saxon bail program, a project, whatever you want to call it, that they brought them with them into the Americas. So that's basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. Can I say something, Kathy? I like the point that you mentioned about how far back this situation, because when you think about it, like on the plantation, when a captive, because I don't like calling us slaves, because we weren't slaves, we were captives, ran away, they had people they paid to go after them. Just like today, when you have a warrant for skipping bail or something like that, they have people come to your house, the sheriff come and get you. And what happens is people are always on the run. And it's interesting that you made that correlation between it's like it never changed. The only thing is that now we're paying them to chase us or to avoid and we're trying to pay them to avoid going to jail. That is
Well,
crazy.
but if you look at a runaway slave, if you look at the ad, I mean, the masters are paying for the return of their
Right.
property. So
Yeah.
I mean, they were chasing them and
But now
watching.
it's the
Find only
reverse.
judge.
Now it's the reverse. We're paying them. You know, we're paying them not to chase us. And you know, like Jerome is saying, we should abolish it because where's the money going? Do they tell us where the money's going? I'm just saying, where's the money going for this bail stuff? I mean, before, like we mentioned last week, there was several district attorneys that used the bail money and the car money and all of that stuff from the people that they arrested, and they kept the money, or they use it for their political gain, or they use it for their house or their lawn. Or, I mean, where's the money really going for the bail? That's what we probably need to find out.
But it's like when they stopped in Missouri, in Ferguson, when they were stopping a large number of blacks, because that's how they find their own raisins and everything else. And I think that's what was happening in Philadelphia. But, you know, to come up with any solutions with this, you have to reduce the number of people that are incarcerated pre-trial. They also say creating in case processing that reduce the length of stay, reduce the number of people held in jail on a probation detainer, reduce racial ethnic disparities across the criminal justice system, reduce the number of people in jail with illnesses, increase cross-system data capacity, and foster meaningful community engagement. Those are just some of the solutions that were put out by I've forgotten who. I think it's. I saw it in the paper. It slipped my mind. I'm not sure if it's the Heritage Foundation. No, it wasn't the Heritage Foundation. But these are just some of the things they're talking about. So they did get a $4 million safety and justice challenge in Philadelphia that aimed to reduce the jail population by another 16% over the next few years, for a total reduction of 50%, beginning with the challenge in 2015 to reduce it. So there we go.
You know, Kathy Lee, I'm glad you mentioned Ferguson. Ferguson is an example of the most egregious use of cash bail, where the city council used the police force to fund putting the blacks in jail and keeping them in jail. And so Ferguson, Missouri is probably not the only example of that. You can go to all the major cities and see where petty crimes are oftentimes used as little ways of the government to throw people behind bars for a day or two and take a little bit of money. So there's a lot of money coming into the states, and it's very profitable for the bail bonds people. And that's why they have, if you watch TV, you've seen several different television shows about bounty hunters, people getting paid to go down and hunt down people who have jumped bail. And the reason is because there's so much money in it. There's
But
just
guess what?
a lot of money in it. What did you say, Kathy?
No, I said, but guess why that started with the bail bondsmen going out and searching. As the country expanded, and the frontier opened up, like Billy the Kid, they couldn't find him. So therefore, they had to pay these marshals and everything to go out, find those people, and bring them to justice. You know, it was done that way. But this is just a topic that is so crazy. And if you want to watch about what's happening with criminal justice reform, there is a documentary on PBS called Philly DA, and it's an 8-part series.
So there's no conclusion about this. It's going on. But I think if you want to hear more about it, you should let people know where they can get all the information, Kathy and Jerome and Gary.
Okay, well, the Heritage Foundation, if you go online, the Heritage Foundation has a very lengthy study on the criminal justice system. I recommend Judge Higginbotham's book in the matter of color. I recommend that if you support the Philadelphia Bail Fund, because 90% of the people that they helped still showed up for court, and a lot of the cases were just thrown out and dismissed. And if it weren't for them, they probably would have pleaded guilty to lesser crimes and have spent time in jail. And vote.
Mhm.
Because the judges have a lot of discretion as to how bail is applied, and the police really pressure people on how much bail they have to pay.
Does anyone know if there is a limit on how long a bail, stays on a case?
No, some people sat in jail for up to 3 years. For example, the guy in New York, Gary, I don't
Yeah.
remember the gentleman's name in New York, but he said he got picked up for stealing a backpack, wound up in Rikers for 3 years.
Yeah.
When his case in solitary confinement, no less. When he finally came to trial, it was dismissed because he didn't do it, but the young man committed suicide.
Yeah. That happened. That was a case that was tragic. The thing is, follow the money. I mean, it's amazing because we're talking about something that seems like it hasn't changed. It seems like it's been going on since time immemorial, because we took it back to the days when we were captives up into current, and it seemed like they just elevated it. The system hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. It's amazing.
Changed. It has been expanded, and it has been incorporated in every facet of African American, Latino, and Indigenous, and let's say poor people's lives all the way around the board.
Yeah.
And
the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850 was used, and a lot of this is based on the Fugitive Slave Act. And you have to remember that the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850 was one of the big elements that led to the Civil War in this country. So cash bail and putting people in jail and keeping them in jail, there's a lot of money in that in America. And as long as there's the money in it, like Kathy said, follow the money. And Gary, the same thing. Follow the money. There's too much money in there to be quote unquote made of just putting people in jail.
Yeah.
And it split the country once. In 1850, it split the country.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying.
It's been a pleasure being with you today. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5:30.
That was good.
Because my nephew spent years in jail in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And it's just a very when you look back at the colonial history of Pennsylvania with William Penn and everything, I mean, it's all about